You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a trunk, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, buy some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And we have some main course for you this evening, talking about the Saints, some head coaching candidates and candidates that had already been picked off, and the AFC and NFC championship game coming up. But honestly, this will be the first off-season podcast that I've done so far, and honestly, I thought the first one wasn't going to be until the Saints hired their head coach. But it looks like they're really doing their due diligence, and from the looks of it, unless the Cowboys choose to hold off a little bit more before signing Brian Schottenheimer. It looks like the Saints may be the last team to hire a head coach. And I mean, I guess you could look at that as a negative, and you could look at it as a positive. You could look at it as, the hottest candidates didn't want to come to the Saints, but you could also look at it as, I just said it earlier, the Saints are doing their due diligence. And if everyone else hires them, then they have their shot or their choice of whoever's left, and they really get to interview those people and make the right choice, even though I guess it's not the hottest name on the market, but they'll be able to choose whoever they want. And I mean, there's some of those coaches that haven't really even didn't do any interviews. They wanted to wait until they either get eliminated from the playoffs or the Super Bowl's over. So you got guys like Joe Brady and Cliff Kingsbury, like the Joe Brady, Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator of the Commanders, and then Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Bills. So those guys are some kind of hot names that kind of fit kind of that similar mold as like the hot name, often young offensive coordinator, kind of like your mid version of Ben Johnson. But anyways, let's get into this a little bit here, because we don't know who the Saints head coach is going to be yet, but I'll give my thoughts on the signings that the other teams ahead of the Saints have made already, and how I feel about not having the opportunity to have that candidate as a Saints head coach. And it's just that they don't have the chance for some of these guys that have already signed. But anyways, let's get into this, because there's quite a bit, not just with the head coaching stuff surrounding the Saints, but also there's some interesting stuff that's kind of come out of the news, leading up to the NFC and the AFC championship game. So we'll see about a little bit about that, and maybe just make a simple prediction on those themes. But anyways, can I get a menu? And so the first thing I wanted to do, I just kind of wanted to go over kind of the order of how the jobs have kind of been filled, and kind of what my thoughts are on those candidates or head coaches. Now they're head coaches of a team now that they've been hired. But let's just go over those real quick. So the first head coach, first person signed during the head coaching hiring period was who I wanted, who I originally wanted. I actually wanted Mike Vrabel, just because I thought he had the most recent kind of skin in the game, and had the most like success, from a season where he was like taking like the Tennessee Titans to like the AFC championship or the divisional rounds of the playoffs like every year. And then he has one bad year and the Tennessee Titans turn around and fire his ass. And then he wasn't last year in the 2024 offseason. It didn't seem like he was like really that hot of a name, which was surprising. So I was surprised that he was the first head coach hired during the signing period. So Mike Vrabel, who I wanted and who I thought could maybe mold the Saints into kind of a tough, gritty team and would bring a good culture here. He's off the board and he's going to go to his former team, the New England Patriots, and I'm sure just from his perspective, that looked like a better place to go, a better location for him because they have cap space, they have their quarterback in Drake May, and then it's a bigger market in New England, Massachusetts. So I get that Boston. So just check Mike Vrabel off the list. So no Mike Vrabel. And then, so that's the first one. So let's see here. The other signing was the New York Jets has signed Aaron Glenn, and the Saints, man, they really didn't get their opportunity to interview Aaron Glenn, or I mean, in person. The snowstorm kind of blew that up. The 200th anniversary of some kind of crazy snowstorm down in New Orleans kept Aaron Glenn from being able to come meet in person. But there was a lot of people saying that Aaron Glenn that the New York Jets weren't going to let Aaron Glenn out of the building anyways. So, do I think that it's some of the snowstorm or it's the New York Jets? Maybe some of the snowstorm, but I think the New York Jets just kind of weren't going to let him leave New York or New Jersey, wherever the Jets are located. But you've heard people talking about the being a good location like the Jets. Obviously, they're in a big market, but I mean they don't have a quarterback either. With Aaron Rodgers and the question mark on if he's going to come back, I would guess that Aaron Glenn probably doesn't want Aaron Rodgers back. But it's just a big market in New York, not a very successful organization, even with it being in there in New York, the good location. But Saints, there aren't too many teams that have worse cap situations than them, and they have a top pick as well. They have a top 5 pick as well. So I can see why Aaron Glenn ended up going to the Jets over the Saints, and honestly, I'm fine with that. I think there's a lot of people out there that since the Dennis Allen hiring and all that business, they're kind of over a defensive coordinator or a defensive minded head coach, even though Mike Vrabel was that. But I think Mike Vrabel had actually shown that he could be successful as a head coach. Unlike Aaron Glenn, he just hasn't proven it yet, and Dennis Allen never did. But I'm fine. I was fine with the Aaron Glenn, even though it seemed like a lot of people thought like Aaron Glenn to the Saints was a sure thing, but obviously it wasn't. But you talk about the Saints maybe not being a location where head coaches want to come, or they don't like Mickey Loomis. I mean, did anyone see those videos of the New York Jets owner, their kid or their grandson in the locker room, like giving game ball speeches? Like, do you think that's any better than anything that Mickey Loomis smacking his gum is doing? I really don't think so. So I don't really look at it as that anyways. But I'm not flustered at all about not getting in on the Aaron Glenn opportunity. More Mike Vrabel, and he was first one gone, first one off the list. And then Ben Johnson, we've already mentioned him before. He didn't want to come to the Saints ever. I think he pretty much had his destination as the Bears. They got the first overall pick from last year, Caleb Williams, and then they have skills positions players. They just need to better both sides of the offense and obviously have better offensive play calling for him. And Ben Johnson, that's the definition of the Chicago Bears. So he was. I don't think Ben Johnson was ever going to be interested in the Saints. So that's I could see why. Most of these I see why they went to these teams over the Saints. Either they have money or they have a quarterback or they're in a bigger market. It's pretty clear. It's not that shouldn't take much explaining. There's a lot. Man, the people are on a hot streak about talking about how bad Mickey Loomis is, and he's the reason why. And if they would have fired Mickey Loomis, then Aaron Glenn would have signed, or Ben Johnson would have came in for an interview. Like, get out of here with that. That's not true. It's partially because of things that Mickey Loomis did. I agree with having the cap space be so terrible and having such an old roster and them winning games at the meaningless games at the end of the season. I can understand why people don't like Mickey Loomis for things like that, but I don't. I definitely don't. I, I definitely don't. I can see why the reasons why are pretty clear, and it's not just directly pointing at Mickey Loomis. It's wild. And then the fun one of the week. This just happened like a day or two ago. I think maybe this just may have just happened yesterday. The Jaguars, they had like a meeting with Liam Cohen, and then a lot of people thought, oh, he's gonna sign there, and then I guess he left. He left Jacksonville, and was reported that he was going back to Tampa Bay to sign a multi-year contract to stay on as their offensive coordinator. But man, he just straight up pulled the rug out from under the Buccaneers, and I love it. Man, you got to take any bit of positive or anything that is in the Saints' benefit. You got to take it wherever you can get it. So them pulling the rug out from under the Jacksonville or out from under the Buccaneers, Liam Cohen and the Jacksonville Jaguars. They were trying to call him, and he was set up for a meeting. His ass just ghosted him and just didn't show up. So Buccaneers fans are very feisty, probably in Liam Cohen's DMs right now. But Liam Cohen, he wasn't even really on my list. I don't think he was on Saints interview list or up there on the list of head coaches they were looking at for anyways. But I love what he did. I love what he did. I guess he was a big help. I guess you could say that you could see that where he was a big help to all the success that Baker Mayfield had last year. So them losing that and getting all those Buccaneers fans heated, man, you gotta love that. So like I said, there's some things going on and stuff, but none of it directly focused on the Saints really, as you obviously because all these other teams that had head coaching openings have all been filled before the Saints. Looks like they're going to be either the second or second to last. And then just this morning, we have Raiders. Raiders have signed Pete Carroll, and just kind of like Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson. I don't think the Saints were ever really considered a Pete Carroll, but of an option that's kind of similar to what I'm hearing from the Saints. He's not as old, I guess. He's not 70 plus years old. But I guess right now he's considered the oldest head coach in the NFL, Pete Carroll, ever in history. But I kind of look at Pete Carroll as being like he can bring in some like respect and an attitude and a culture to the Raiders that you may have not really known what you're going to get from like these younger coordinators like Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen. You really don't know how they're going to run a team, but you know what you're going to get with the 70-year-old Pete Carroll who's been like a head coach for like 30, 40 years. Like you know you're going to get something like that. And I'd pretty hard pressed to believe that the Raiders are going to lose 4 games coming up in 2025 with Pete Carroll as their head coach. Like that's just not going to happen. They're going to win 7 or 8 games no matter what, just because they have Pete Carroll as their head coach. And I kind of look at that as a similar signing to what the Saints have available now. They have either the young coordinator uh, and Joe Brady, who a ton of people want because he was like a co-offensive coordinator for the 2019 LSU champion, a beast national champion. So people love him because of that. But he was awful with the as the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. He was terrible, and then he wasn't originally even given the job. He was just kind of like a quarterback coach or something for the Bills, but they fired their original offensive coordinator and made Joe Brady the offensive coordinator. So I'm not so sure about that. But Mike McCarthy, he has kind of a similar resume to Pete Carroll. You know, has won a Super Bowl, has been in multiple NFC Championship games, and has a very similar record. Like if you lay them over each other, they're almost identical. Mike McCarthy's coaching record to Sean Payton. He's just kind of boring, but I would take him. I think that's probably going to end up being who I'm going to want is Mike McCarthy, just because you know with maybe without uh, Jerry Jones's fingers in the game, and I guess there's all those people screaming about Mickey Loomis possibly being just as bad, but I really don't see it. Uh, that the Saints aren't going to win five. They're not going to lose. They're not going to only win 5 games with Mike McCarthy as their head coach. But anyway, so that was the Raiders and the Pete Carroll signing this morning, and then you have the Cowboys are rumored to want Brian Schottenheimer, which I hadn't heard much about Brian Schottenheimer. I'm guessing that's Marty Schottenheimer's one of his sons, I guess. But they're rumored to do that, so be interesting to see if they hire him before the Saints make any type of hire, or if really the Saints are going to have the opening to whoever's left. You know, the atmosphere that's out there for the head coaching. They'll have their pick of top what's left, I guess. But I don't think that's bad. It's negative in some ways, but in the same way, you know, they're doing their due diligence and they're wanting to make the right hire and not just, you know, the new hot coordinator on the market, which is what I look at as Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, offense and a defensive coordinator. Uh, so so that's Brian Schottenheimer, and then for the Saints, like the last candidates for theirs. Let's see. So we talked about Mike McCarthy already a little bit, and that's who I would prefer. I kind of look at him kind of similar as Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton. They all have that kind of similar resume, even though Mike Vrabel hadn't coached near as long as any of those guys and never won a Super Bowl, never went to a Super Bowl, but went to a couple AFC Championship games. But I want some veteran leadership. I want a locker room present, a culture brought in here, something that you just never seemed to be alive with Dennis Allen. So you have Mike McCarthy. We mentioned Joe Brady, which I think most Saints fans and local Louisianites or whatever you want to call them, people from Louisiana and LSU fans probably want Joe Brady, which I kind of look at him similar to Cliff Kingsbury, because Cliff Kingsbury had like what, one good year uh, in Arizona, the the Hail Murray season, to when he had DeAndre Hopkins and they were like one and done in the playoffs against what, the Buccaneers, I think. But yeah, I look at Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Brady, similar, and then we got those are probably the three I'd be okay with, I guess. Mike McCarthy, Joe Brady, and kind of gritting your teeth about Cliff Kingsbury. But then we had kind of these ridiculous interviews that had these guys come in for a couple times, but I kind of understand why they were brought in. And I'm talking about Mike Kafka and Anthony Weaver. And they've done uh, Zoom meetings, and I think they've even done in-person meetings. I know they have with Mike Kafka, at least, who's like like an offensive coordinator or the quarterback coach for the Giants or something, and Anthony Anthony Weaver is like a defensive coordinator for the Dolphins. But yeah, I don't, those names, I didn't even know who those guys are. Never even heard of them before. But I think they kind of probably, because they've already had Zoom meetings and had in-person meetings for them, I think those are kind of just something to be kind of marked off their checklist for the Rooney Rule interviews, because you have to interview two minority candidates in person. And yeah, I think you scratch both of those off your list with Mike Kafka, who's Puerto Rican, I think, and then Anthony Weaver, who is African American. He is black. So we know what that's about, and so I don't think there's really any chance that the Saints hire either one of those guys. Not as head coach at least. Maybe as a coordinator, but I doubt it. That's just to get the Rooney Rule out of the way for them to hire one of their actual candidates, which is looking more and more like probably Mike McCarthy or Joe Brady. So that's the coaching carousel that we're on and roller coaster that we're on as Saints fans. I just have really no idea and no idea or concept of when they'll make this hire. I really don't know when the coaching hire is going to come down the pike for the Saints. But with the way it's looking like they're going to be the last team to pick, and I guess they'll have their pick and their shot at in-person interviews with Joe Brady and Cliff Kingsbury, because none of the other teams wanted to do due diligence and wait around for them to be done with the playoffs. So that could be interesting, and hopefully that leads to like a diamond in a rough, even though these are names people have heard of. But so that's the coaching, NFL, the rumors, and the signings. Let's move on to something else now. Let's move on to talk about the Commanders a little bit and the AFC and NFC championship. And what I want to talk about is, and I'm surprised it hasn't been blown up a lot more by Saints fans. I feel as if I'm the first person to mention anything about it or mention anything on a podcast about it. And I'm annoyed by it. I've been heated pretty much all morning since hearing these comments from Joe Witt, the defensive coordinator for the Commanders, when talking about what they're going to do with Jalen Hurts if he runs the ball, and they're saying, "Oh, we're going to hit him. We're going to hit him. We're going to hit him and treat him like a running back." And if their offensive coordinators and offensive coaches want to run him and risk him like that, then okay, we're gonna hit him. That's how we're gonna treat him. That sounds like very Bountygate 2.0. It was just basically the version of it that was recorded. Was known to be recorded. It wasn't the secretly recorded version of that conversation, which would have sounded more like Greg Williams. Hit that outside ACL. We want his head sideways. That's about the only difference of it. So, and what makes me even more annoyed and mad about this is that all the people in media and stuff are like, "Oh, I love that. I love to hear that kind of attitude from a defensive coach and just a coach. I want to hear that. I want to put that mental in their head, But I'm telling you, if Greg Williams was still a defensive coordinator, or if that was the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton's led team, they'd be burning down, burning down wherever organization those two teams are playing in, or if they were in the playoffs still, they wouldn't even let them play. So I'm heated over these Joe Witt Bountygate 2.0 sounding ass comments that we're hearing, and the fact that because everyone seems to like the Commanders, I guess everyone besides Philadelphia fans like the Washington Commanders. It's okay to say stuff like that, because we know, unless you're a Saints fan, people don't like the Saints. So which they were winning back in 2011, 2012. They were just winning too much, so that's why they had to make this story up. But hell, he's literally saying it to live open media. But yeah, not a fan of Joe Witt and Bountygate 2.0 sounding ass comments that apparently no one cares about. And for some reason, no Saints fans, other Saints fans or media reporters or anything, seem to want to report on it. But I did, and you heard my opinion, and I was freaking a little heated this morning because of it. All right. So now then, enough of that. Calm down for a second. We'll just do a quick prediction here. I hadn't done too much in regards to watching the Commanders and the Eagles, like rewatching their games or anything, or really delving real deep into my thoughts about either team. Same with the Chiefs and the Bills, but just kind of a quick prediction for each one of these games. So for the NFC Championship game, I just got off on my rant about Joe Witt, the defensive coordinator for the for the Commanders. But man, for how many people out there that think the Eagles are such like a big favorite and are like a guaranteed Super Bowl uh, contender, you just fill their name in. I don't see it. I don't see it. Like after Jalen Hurts got nicked in that game last week, the divisional round game. They never really seemed the same. Besides his his 40-yard touchdown run, and then the two 40 plus yard touchdown runs by Shaquan Barkley, they were not that impressive. He wasn't able to pass the ball really or put up any numbers. Like if the Commanders can just contain Shaquan Barkley to maybe just like 100 yards rushing and maybe just one touchdown, whether receiving or rushing. I feel that even though I guess he's been full in practice, I think Jalen Hurts will be limited in this game against the Commanders. And I mean, the Commanders they beat them 36-33 in overtime. Uh, that was what? That was like week 17, week 18. I know it was Kenny Pickett, but a lot of people kind of look at Jalen Hurts. If he's limited mobility wise, I don't see that he's much better of a player than Kenny Pickett. I'd say they're about the same when it comes to passing. It's just Jalen Hurts is so much more mobile than him. But if he's not mobile, I don't see why the Commanders can't eke out a win or formulate a win in that game. So for the NFC Championship game, I'm sure there's most people out there. If you're an Eagles fan or you're a Chiefs fan, you're going to be like, oh, you're just saying this because you don't like the Eagles or you don't like the Chiefs. That's not necessarily the case. I was looking at Jalen Hurts as being a little nicked up at the end of that game. So in the NFC Championship game, I'm going with the Commanders to win this. I think it'll be another shootout. I don't really see that the Commanders do stop Saquon Barkley, but you've seen with a healthy Jaden Daniels, they can score at will, even on the Philadelphia Eagles, and can win a shootout against them. Even though I understand it was with Kenny Pickett, but still, I don't see that Jalen Hurts is going to be 100% healthy for this game. And then on to the AFC Championship game, the prediction for this. This one's a little harder for me. I think it's maybe because our Saints fans, we're more we follow NFC teams a little bit more. So really, until the playoffs starts or if the Saints are playing an AFC team, I don't really follow the Bills or I don't really follow the Commanders. But looking at these are teams. The Bills are the only team that ever beat only team that beat the Kansas City Chiefs in the regular season. Beat them 31-20 or something like that. So they had a very impressive day against them. But I guess the difference with this is that it'll be in Kansas City this time, and all people want to mention the stuff about the refs being on their side as well. But that's not kind of the thing that I kind of looked at from this game that seemed that the Buffalo Bills have kind of been deploying a little bit more and really relying quite heavily on since the playoffs starts. And it makes sense because it's the playoffs. It's not something you want to do all the time during the regular season. But that's running Josh Allen. Josh Allen, he's basically he's the Buffalo Bills version of Jalen Hurts. With their brotherly shove, tush push, and they basically on every down, every first down, they're working with four downs, not just three, because if it's two, if it's 4th and 2 or less, like they're going for it, and that's something that I think the Bills will be able to implement. I think it really will come down to how the Buffalo Bills and handle being in Kansas City, a wild place to be on NFC Championship game. So if they're able to handle that and are able to limit the penalties, I could see the Buffalo Bills, beating the Kansas City Chiefs again. They just need to uh, do all the stuff previously stated, and just unlike what the Houston Texans did against the Kansas City Chiefs, actually try to cover or try to hit, kind of like the Commanders were saying, try to hit Travis Kelce would be kind of a good plan to deploy, especially on third down. So in this AFC Championship game, prediction between the Kansas City Chiefs uh, versus the Buffalo Bills on the road at Arrowhead. I'm going with the Buffalo Bills to win and get this win again. They show that they're the only team that can beat the Chiefs this year, and I think they're going to show that they're the only team that can do it again. And they just have a good defense. I mean, a good offense, that wears on defenses. Having such a mobile quarterback and such a weapon at quarterback, that you're working with four downs, like after every first down. So I'm going with the Bills here, and man, I know that makes me probably look like a hater, that I just dislike the Chiefs or dislike the Philadelphia Eagles, but that's really not it. The Commanders, they showed towards the end of the year that they can beat the Eagles, and the Bills, they beat the Chiefs before. So I'm just going off of past history, and people kind of bang on me, keep saying that the Eagles, it was just because of Kenny Pickett, but I don't know how much better a limited and injured Jalen Hurts is than a miniature hand Kenny Pickett. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. We've kind of gone over the coaching hires, the hires that have already been hired, and then I guess kind of the candidates that are left for the Saints, and then Bountygate 2.0. Oh, ask Joe Witt, and then we got the AFC and NFC championship coming up this weekend. So I'm here for it, and man, hopefully, the Saints are doing their due diligence. But hopefully for the next podcast, hopefully we'll be able to talk about and know who our head coach, our new head coach, is going to be. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?